Yesterday, the hospital bombing, have you reached out to the opposition about the hospital bombing in Syria?
I'm aware. I mean, we're obviously in near constant contact with them, or frequent contact with the opposition. And I'm sure that what we said publicly, what the Secretary stated publicly, was conveyed to them in our private conversations as well.
Secretary Kerry said he urged both sides.
Correct.
And a lot of times when the regime does it, you call out Assad specifically. Why don't you specifically?
Michael, we're trying to get more granularity on what exactly happened. That's part of the process here, but don't have anything to add at this point. Michelle?
Did the rebels that the U.S. is in contact with in Aleppo agree to separate themselves from al-Nusra there?
Again, this agreement or reaffirmation is predicated on the fact that both the regime and the opposition who have signed up to this cessation will act accordingly and in good faith. Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. In order to maintain this cessation or this renewed cessation of hostilities, it's incumbent on them, and it's what our message is to them, that they cannot interact with those parties on the ground who are not part of that cessation. Let me finish. And that's been a consistent message from us. That said, let me finish. We also are cognizant of the fact that, and the Secretary himself has spoken to this, I think in Geneva, and we've said it before, that the situation on the ground in Aleppo city in particular is very fluid and very complex, and there has been quote unquote intermingling of some of these groups. We need to separate them. We need to clearly delineate who is where going forward in order for this cessation to have effect.
I understand your message to them.
Yeah.
What is their response to you?
Well, again, I mean, I don't have their immediate response to this latest reaffirmation today, but we are going into this believing that we can influence them to abide by it.
Sir, if the U.S. has hard time separating the rebels from al-Nusra in Aleppo, do you expect Assad forces to do a better job, or do you expect them to stop attacking al-Nusra in Aleppo altogether?
What we need now is a complete de-escalation of the violence, and that's what we're looking for, all sides. What we have seen over the past several days, certainly, but weeks, is on the part of the regime is, and again, the Secretary spoke to this much better than I will be able to, but just blatant attacks on civilian populations, on hospitals, on medical facilities, and again, targeting civilians that are unacceptable, no matter how you justify them, whether you're going after al-Nusra or whatever, however you justify them, it's just simply unacceptable. It needs to stop. And the Secretary spoke yesterday that attacks on both sides on civilians need to stop. So what we're looking for now is a cessation, a credible cessation in and around Aleppo. Please.
For the ceasefire to hold in Aleppo, do you expect Assad forces to stop attacking al-Nusra, given that, as you said, the lines between rebels and al-Nusra there are fluid?
Again, it is a very fluid situation. Nusra is not party to the cessation. We all know that. But we have not seen the regime's actions specifically targeting Nusra. In fact, we've seen them targeting, civilian populations as well as opposition groups. So what we want to see is them to comply, the regime to comply with the cessation of hostilities, which only applies to those who have signed up to the cessation of hostilities. Please.
Can you clarify, with this new cessation in Aleppo, the U.S. and Russia, of course, is spearheading this, but has either side received assurances from the Assad regime and as well as from rebels on whether or not they're buying into this and are ready to comply with it?
Well, again, I think, so two things. One is, this all hinges on the fact that, or the idea that we, as well as the Russians, can influence the main combatants on the ground to uphold a cessation of hostilities. We're in very close touch with Syrian opposition. We know that the Russians are in very close touch with the regime. So, it's a certain test, if I could put it that way, that they're going to abide by this cessation of hostilities. They're the ones who need to ultimately abide by it if it's going to have any effect. But we believe we can. Sorry, but we believe we believe we can exert the necessary influence on them, and that we can get, and we have their buy-in on this effort.
But neither side has said, the regime or the opposition has stated to you, we're going to agree with this cessation at this point.
Well, again, I'll let them speak for themselves, but we believe that, at least on the opposition side, that we have their buy-in.